The ceasefire was supposed to expire last night. It didn't. But this morning, Iran answered Trump's extension with something that makes the entire diplomatic picture significantly more complicated. Iran's Revolutionary Guard seized 2 container ships in the Strait of Hormuz. A third vessel was attacked and disabled off Iran's coast. 3 ships in one morning in the most strategically sensitive waterway on Earth, on the same day the ceasefire was extended. This is April 22nd, 2026, day 54, and the war that was supposedly very close to over has just entered what may be its most structurally frozen phase yet. Not hot war, not peace. A managed stalemate in which both sides are simultaneously maintaining a ceasefire, escalating economically, and refusing to sit in the same room. Let us go through what happened yesterday and this morning in precise sequence, because the sequence matters more today than at any previous point in this crisis. Tuesday evening, hours before the original ceasefire expiry, Trump posted on Truth Social that he was extending the ceasefire indefinitely at Pakistan's request until such time as their leaders and representatives can come up with a unified proposal. He simultaneously directed the U.S. military to continue the blockade of Iranian ports and stated the U.S. remains ready and able to resume combat operations. The extension came after a day of extraordinary diplomatic confusion. Vance had been confirmed to lead the delegation to Islamabad. Then Trump told ABC News he wouldn't go for security reasons. Then the White House confirmed he would. Then Iranian state news agency Tasnim reported that Tehran had informed U.S. counterparts through Pakistan that their negotiators would not attend. Then CNN sources said an Iranian delegation was coming Tuesday. Then Pakistan's information minister posted that Iran still hadn't formally confirmed attendance.
Then Tasnim said attending talks is a waste of time. And then Trump extended the ceasefire. 2 things are important about the extension. First, the word indefinitely, or more precisely, until discussions are concluded one way or the other, removes the hard deadline pressure that had been the primary engine pushing both sides toward the table. Iran's senior advisor Mahdi Mohammadi immediately called the extension a ploy to buy time for a surprise strike. Ghalibaf's advisor said, "It means nothing." These are not the reactions of a side that feels relieved by the extension. Second, the blockade continues. This is the central contradiction that defines the stalemate. Iran's UN envoy said clearly, the moment the U.S. ends its blockade, negotiations in Pakistan can begin. Trump views the blockade as his primary leverage. He will not end it without a deal. Iran will not negotiate under it. Both positions are logical from each side's perspective. Together they produce a deadlock, with no visible mechanism for resolution, short of one side bowing entirely, which neither will do. And then, this morning, Iran gave its answer to the ceasefire extension. The Revolutionary Guard seized 2 container ships in the Strait of Hormuz, citing what it called maritime violations. A third vessel was attacked by gunfire and disabled off Iran's coast. The British Maritime Trade Operations reported the incidents. Brent Crude, which had dipped slightly on ceasefire extension optimism, rose back toward $100 per barrel. A Greek-linked cargo ship was also reported attacked, though Greece's foreign minister said it was unclear whether it had been seized. The seizures are not random. They are a carefully calibrated message. Iran is demonstrating that it retains operational control of the world's most important oil choke point, regardless of what the ceasefire says on paper. It is showing that the blockade of its ports, which Trump is maintaining as leverage, has a direct mirror in Iran's ability to block everyone else's shipping in the strait. The asymmetry here is strategic. The U.S. blockade of Iranian ports primarily hurts Iran. Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz hurts every country in the world that depends on Gulf energy exports, which includes the U.S.'s Gulf Arab allies, China, India, Japan, South Korea, and Europe. Tehran is not just playing defense. It is using the choke point as a weapon that affects far more parties than the direct combatants. CNBC's analysts noted this morning that Brent Crude is now approximately 50% higher than before the war began on February 28th. The ship seizures will push it higher still. Meanwhile,
In a detail that barely made headlines amid the ship seizures, 30 countries sent military planners to an RAF base north of London yesterday to begin assembling a multinational Hormuz naval protection mission.
This is the operational follow-up to the Paris summit from April 17th, where 49 nations gathered to discuss protecting freedom of navigation in the Strait. The UK's plan involves autonomous mine hunting systems deployed from motherships, naval escorts for commercial vessels, and enhanced intelligence sharing. But British defense officials have been explicit about one constraint. Whatever plan emerges from this conference will only be deployed after a sustained ceasefire between Iran and the US. Not during the current managed standoff, after it. That caveat is important. Europe is building the post-war Hormuz security architecture. It is not yet deploying it. The architects are in London. The war is still technically active, and the Strait is still being used as a weapon. The Iran internal dynamics today deserve careful attention, because the unified proposal language in Trump's extension announcement is a direct reference to something that has been quietly visible throughout this crisis. When Trump said he was extending the ceasefire until Iran's leaders and representatives can come up with a unified proposal, he was describing something real. Iran's government is genuinely fractured on this question. The elected president Pezeshkian, the professional diplomat Arakchi, and the hardline IRGC-aligned Ghalibaf are not operating from the same script. Arakchi said after round one they were inches from an MOU. Ghalibaf said Trump is trying to turn the table into a surrender document. Mohammadi dismissed the ceasefire extension as a ploy. These are not coordinated messages. They reflect genuine internal disagreement about whether to negotiate, on what terms, and with what red lines. Iran's supreme leader, the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who has remained largely absent from public communications since taking power, has not issued a clear, unified directive. That absence is itself a political position. It allows different factions to advance their preferred approach without a top-level veto. Trump's extension until Iran produces a unified proposal is clever precisely because it places the pressure on Iran's internal fractures rather than on a specific deadline. It says, "You can have as much time as you need, but you need to agree among yourselves first." The question of what resolution looks like in this stalemate is worth examining clearly, because the public framing from both sides obscures the actual available outcomes. There are essentially four paths forward from here. Path 1. Iran agrees to a framework on the nuclear moratorium and Hormuz governance. The blockade is suspended, talks resume in Islamabad, and a full agreement is signed over weeks or months. This is the best-case scenario and remains theoretically possible. Path 2. The stalemate continues indefinitely. Ceasefire nominally in place, blockade ongoing, Hormuz in Iranian-controlled semi-open status, occasional ship seizures and confrontations, no formal war and no formal peace. This is the historical pattern from the 1980s tanker war, and it is more durable than it sounds. Both sides absorb the economic pain. No single flashpoint triggers full-scale resumption of bombing, and the world adjusts to a new abnormal in Gulf energy markets. Path 3. A miscalculation or deliberate escalation. A U.S. strike on an Iranian vessel, an Iranian missile attack on a U.S. warship, a Gulf state infrastructure attack, triggers a resumption of full-scale hostilities. The likelihood of this rises with each ship seizure, each blockaded tanker, each confrontation in the Strait. Path 4. Internal political change in Iran. Either pressure from the economic devastation leads to a leadership shift, or popular discontent produces enough domestic instability that the IRGC calculates a deal is preferable to continued confrontation. This is the path the Trump administration appeared to be banking on when it launched the war in February, and it has not materialized in the expected form. None of those paths has a clear timetable. All of them are live simultaneously. Here is the honest picture on the morning of April 22, 2026, day 54. The ceasefire has been extended indefinitely. The blockade continues. Iran seized 2 ships this morning. Talks have not resumed.
Vance's trip was canceled. Brent is back at $100. 30 nations are in London building a post-war Hormuz mission that cannot be deployed yet. Iran's government is fractured. The IRGC is messaging through ship seizures, and Trump is waiting for a unified proposal from a government that cannot produce one. This is what a managed stalemate looks like. It is not the worst outcome. It is not a good outcome. It is the place where wars go when neither side can win and neither side can fully stop. The board has not reset. The pieces are still in their positions from last week. But the clock that was driving urgency has been removed, and without a clock, both sides have less incentive to move. Watch the next ship seizure, watch the next blockade enforcement, and come back tomorrow. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more people find the board.